Hey guys, I'm back, and today we are going to explain the fare change of October 5th. So let's get straight to it. Now since you're here, I am assuming that you know how to use the compass card. If you do not know how to use your compass card, I have an 11-minute lecture video which will be linked on this slide. As you already know, or as you should know already, all buses will go to one zone. Also remember that this is only buses that go to one zone. The SkyTrain and SeaBus and West Coast Express remain on their zone fares. Now this fare zone change revolves around this general rule of thumb. You must be on a moving SkyTrain or SeaBus that crosses the zone boundary during zone hours in order to be charged the extra zones. Now from this rule, we can derive that everything between Patterson on the Expo line and Gilmore on the Millennium line is in zone number 2. We also recall that paper tickets still last 90 minutes. In addition to this, after the last tap within the 90 minutes, you have an additional 120 minutes to complete that last leg. The last reminder I wanted to get out was zone time or zone hours, which is from the start of service until 6:30 p.m. on weekdays. Now we have here a fare zone map, and we're going to explain the 5 zone boundaries or zone crossings that will be impacted by the fare change. The first zone boundary to be impacted is the sky bridge between Scott Road and Columbia stations. The second and third boundaries are between Joyce and Patterson on the Expo line and Renfrew and Gilmore on the Millennium line. The fourth crossing that will be impacted is between Bridgeport and Marine Drive on the Canada line, and the fifth being Lonsdale Quay and Waterfront on the SeaBus. Now we're gonna go over how many zones you will be traveling under the new fare zones. Your fare is one zone if you do not plan on using the SeaBus. Any SkyTrain travel between King George and Scott Road, but not westbound of Scott Road. Any SkyTrain travel between Patterson and Gilmore, but not west of Gilmore or Patterson. Any Canada Line travel north of Marine Drive, and anything south of and including Bridgeport. So essentially, if you do not cross Broad Inlet, Fraser River, or Boundary Road, your trip is one zone. Now your trip is 2 zones if any of these 4 crossings are present in your travels. Again, that is on SkyTrain or SeaBus only. Your trip can include any of the 4 crossings, but not Columbia and Scott Road. Let's turn that around. Your trip is 2 zones if you traveled from Scott Road to Columbia, but not into Zone 1. Now let's talk about 3 zones. Your trip is 3 zones if you travel from Scott Road to Columbia and into Vancouver using SkyTrain or SeaBus. Now we're gonna go over some examples. For the first example, we're gonna start in Surrey and then cross over the Fraser River to 22nd Street. The normal SkyTrain to 22nd Street is 2 zones. However, if you go to Scottsdale and take the 340 instead, it is 1 zone. For the next example, we're gonna go from Surrey Central to Lougheed Station across the Fraser River. A trip on the typical Expo and Millennium Line trains is 2 zones. However, if you take the 337 to the Highway 1 overpass and transfer to the 555 bus, it is 1 zone. Next, let's talk about Coquitlam to Vancouver. If you take anything from Coquitlam Central to SkyTrain and then SkyTrain to Vancouver, it is 2 zones. However, if you take the 160, it is 1 zone. Next, we're gonna go between downtown Vancouver and Lonsdale Quay. If you take the SeaBus to Lonsdale Quay, it's 2 zones. However, if you take the 250 to Park Royal and 239 to Lonsdale Quay, it is 1 zone. Okay, so now let's go over some of the more difficult examples. Let's start from Surrey to Vancouver. If you take the SkyTrain, it will be 3 zones. If you take the SkyTrain to 22nd Street, get a 410 bus to Richmond, and take the Canada Line to Vancouver, it is still 3 zones. This is because you're crossing from Surrey to New Westminster on the SkyTrain and doing the same thing again from Richmond to Vancouver. Next, we're gonna talk about Lougheed and Braid stations. We'll use the 97 as our example. North Road between Conwood Avenue and Lougheed Station were in common zones 3 and 2. Thus, people coming in from Coquitlam were able to transfer at Lougheed Station despite Lougheed Station being in zone 2. The question here is whether you would need a 2 zone or 1 zone bus fare if you wanted to use the Lougheed Transit Exchange. The answer here is 1 zone, well 2 zones if you want to travel to Vancouver. The key idea here is what crosses the zone boundary. Let's recall our general rule of thumb. the SkyTrain has to cross the zone boundary in order for the additional zones to be charged. Now at Lougheed Station, the tracks do not cross the zone boundary because it is a multi-zone station. So really, you are crossing the zone boundary when you transfer, not the SkyTrain. So it's one zone. Now let's recap our important points. Your SkyTrain or C-Bus must cross the zone boundary in order for additional zones to be charged. And because of that, all transfers at Lougheed and Braid stations are now one zone fare. If you're going to Vancouver, then it's two zones. And the last thing I want to say is to make use of the multi-zone routes to help you save on a few zones. We already went over these routes in our examples, and if you need any help in where they go or any schedules, I will have a link here in the description below. Alright guys, that's it. Make sure to watch my original compass tutorial. I'll have it annotated here in this screen. And don't hesitate to ask me any questions because I love answering them. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Peace.